You might have some big trees in your backyard or in your local park, but they probably can't compare with a majestic tree named the General Sherman tree in California. The Sherman tree is not just the largest living tree in the United States, it's the largest living tree on Earth. Now that is a massive tree. The Golden State is almost its own country, packing in iconic sites, national parks, and chilled-out coastal towns with friendly, welcoming locals. California seems to have it all. Sun-seekers can head straight to the southern coast for laid-back beach towns and days of surfing. Adventure addicts have miles and miles of untamed landscape to explore, while culture buffs are offered some of the most artistically minded cities in the whole country. Napa Valley is 30 miles long and never more than 5 miles wide, pressed between two mountain ranges. The Mayacamas rise to the west, the Vaca Mountains to the east. Together they hold the valley's wet winters and dry summers in place. That climate is why Cabernet Sauvignon grows here better than almost anywhere else on Earth. In January and February, wild mustard blooms yellow between the bare vine rows, a brief window that photographers wait all year for. More than 400 wineries operate in this valley, from small family estates on private roads to properties visible from miles away. In 1976, a blind tasting in Paris placed Napa Cabernet against the most celebrated Bordeaux bottles, and Napa won. Most clear mornings, hot air balloons rise above the vine canopy while the light is still low and the hills are quiet. From that height, the rows run parallel along the contours, curving around hillsides, broken by oak groves and creek drainages. The oldest vines here grow gnarled and slow, producing less fruit but more concentrated flavor. The Napa River moves through the center of it all, tidal and unhurried in the lower valley. "30 miles of land, and the wine made here is poured on every continent." Before we head to the next spot, here's a fun question. Which city in California is famous for Hollywood? Comment your answer. It is a stratovolcano, part of the same cascade arc that runs from Northern California up through Oregon and Washington. Mount Shasta appears before anything else in Northern California, a white cone rising 14,179 feet out of a landscape of pine forest and dry scrub, visible from 100 miles away on a clear day. The mountain last erupted around 1786, and the volcanic structure beneath the surface is still considered active. On its west flank, a second cone called Shastina rises to over 12,000 feet, large enough that in most mountain ranges it would be the dominant peak. 7 named glaciers cover the upper slopes, including Whitney Glacier, the largest glacier remaining in California. The Sacramento River begins here, fed by snowmelt and glacial runoff that drains down through the conifer forest below. From the air, the mountain reads differently in each season, white and unbroken in deep winter, then streaked with dark rock ribs as summer melts the snowpack back toward the summit. The town of Mount Shasta sits at the base at around 3,600 feet, small enough that the mountain fills most of the sky in every direction. At sunset, the peak catches the last light, while the valley below is already in shadow. Climbers attempt the summit year-round, though the upper slopes hold serious glaciated terrain in any season. After Rainier, Shasta is the tallest volcano in the Cascade Range, the kind of mountain that rewrites the scale of everything around it. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our interesting videos. It receives less than 5 inches of rain per year, and in summer, temperatures regularly climb past 100 degrees. The Mojave covers roughly 25,000 square miles of southeastern California, spilling into Nevada, Utah, and Arizona, a high desert sitting mostly between 2,000 and 5,000 feet above sea level. Death Valley lies within its boundaries, the lowest point in North America, 282 feet below sea level, where the heat builds into something measurable and oppressive. The landscape is not one thing. It shifts from flat basin to layered red canyon, from gray gravel plain to black lava field, sometimes within a single hour of driving. The lava fields are among the strangest features, dark basalt poured out by cinder cones that still dot the desert floor, some of them geologically recent enough to look like they cooled last century. Amboy Crater is one of the most visible, a dark cone rising from flat scrubland, surrounded by a frozen lava flow that stretches outward in every direction. The Joshua tree grows only here, a yucca that branches in angular, unpredictable directions and can live for hundreds of years in soil that almost nothing else tolerates. Old routes cross this desert in every direction. Native American trade paths, the Old Spanish Trail, Route 66. The roads are long and straight, and on a clear day, you can watch a vehicle move across the basin for 20 minutes before it disappears. At the right hour, the light on the red iron hills turns orange, then amber, then goes dark fast. The Mojave is not empty. It is just operating on a scale and timeline that makes human activity look temporary. We worked really hard to make these videos, and of course, your support is a huge motivation. If you love us, you can scan the QR code here to buy us a cup of coffee. Big Sur is 90 miles of coastline where the Santa Lucia Mountains fall straight into the Pacific. No beach, no shelf, just cliff and then ocean. Highway 1 was cut into that cliff face and completed in 1937, and it remains one of the most difficult roads to maintain in California. Bixby Creek Bridge, built in 1932, spans a canyon 260 feet above the creek below. A single concrete arch that photographers have been shooting from the same angle for almost a century. McWay Falls drops 80 feet directly onto a cove beach that no one can reach on foot. The waterfall just falls into the surf and mixes with the tide. The permanent population here is under 1,000 people, and there are no traffic lights in Big Sur, no chain stores, no grid. The marine layer rolls in from the Pacific most mornings, covering the ridgelines in fog before burning off by midday, or not burning off at all. California condors were brought back to this stretch of coast in the 1990s, and they now ride the thermals off the cliffs in numbers. The trails along the bluffs move through coastal scrub and grassland and end at edges where the drop is sudden and the view is very long. People drive Highway 1 slowly here, not because the road demands it, but because looking away from the ocean feels like a waste. Mammoth Lakes sits at 7,880 feet on the eastern edge of the Sierra Nevada, where the mountains drop sharply toward the Great Basin and the air is noticeably thinner before you've done anything strenuous. The town takes its name from the mountain above it, Mammoth Mountain, a dormant volcano that rises to 11,053 feet and sits inside the Long Valley caldera, a system formed by a massive eruption roughly 760,000 years ago. The ski area spreads across 3,500 acres with 3,100 feet of vertical drop, and the season here regularly runs from November into June, one of the longest in the country. More than 100 lakes lie within a few miles of town, from small alpine tarns tucked under granite walls to Crowley Lake on the dry eastern flats. The Ritter Range rises to the west, its jagged profile, the minarets, visible from the valley floor as a serrated line against the sky. In summer, the same mountain that holds ski runs becomes a network of hiking and biking trails, threading through conifer forest and high granite basins. At dawn, the light hits the eastern Sierra face first, turning the rock orange while the valley below is still cold and blue. The John Muir Wilderness begins just past the edge of town, where the trails go quiet and the lakes hold no development on any shore. Crowley Lake draws anglers and boaters in the warmer months, the water flat enough to mirror the mountains behind it. If you've been here before, comment number 1. If not, comment number 4. Someone designed this place as a fantasy, and it never stopped being one. In 1905, a developer named Abbott Kinney dredged a network of canals, planted palm trees, and opened a seaside resort he called the Venice of America. The canals are still here. So is everything else. Ocean Front Walk runs 2.5 miles along the sand. Part open-air market, part performance stage, part beach town that forgot to stay small. Cyclists move through it in both directions while the rest of the world watches from the curb. From above, the whole thing resolves into something simpler, a long strip of sand where the city finally runs out of room. The pier extends past the break, where surfers work the same swells they always have, indifferent to the crowds behind them. At dusk, The light turns everything on the boardwalk the same warm color, and for a moment, the murals and the palm trees and the beach shops all look like they belong together. They do. The fog comes in off the Pacific every morning, and the trees drink it. Coast redwoods pull up to 40% of their water directly from coastal mist, not from the ground, but from the air itself. From above, the whole forest disappears into it, just the mountain ridges left floating. Down on the ground, the scale takes a moment to register. These trees can grow over 20 feet wide at the base and push past 350 feet into the canopy, the tallest living things on Earth, and they've been here long enough that some of them were already old when Rome fell. The bark alone runs up to a foot thick, dense enough to shrug off fire and insects both. Redwood National and State Parks protect roughly 45% of all old-growth coast redwood forest left on the planet. The rest is gone. Roosevelt elk move through the river valleys at the park's edge, crossing the water in loose groups, unhurried. Fallen giants stay where they land, moss and ferns taking over within decades. Death here is just another form of ground cover. The park was named a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1980. Walk far enough into the old growth and the sound drops out completely, just the drip of condensation from 300 feet above. Which region are you curious about? Let us know in the comments. We'll see you there in the next video. 100 miles east of Los Angeles, Southern California does something it's not supposed to do. Big Bear Lake sits at nearly 6,800 feet in the San Bernardino Mountains, and at that elevation, winter arrives with full conviction. Snow on the pines, ice along the shoreline, skiers working the slopes above a lake that's still blue in the middle of December. The lake itself stretches about 7 miles end to end, ringed by forest and the kind of cabins that exist specifically to be seen from above through a light coating of snow. It was built as a reservoir. The current dam went up between 1911 and 1912, backing water into a valley that already had a lake in it. At dusk in winter, the surrounding peaks catch alpenglow before the water does, going rose and gold while the lake stays dark below. Then the snow comes and the whole basin goes quiet. Ski lifts run up the mountain on the south shore, cutting lines through the pines. From directly above, the skiers are small shadows crossing a white slope that shouldn't exist this close to the Pacific. The town sits right against the water, small enough that a single aerial shot covers most of it, buried under snow that makes everything look like the same material. Big Bear doesn't announce itself. It just waits for you to arrive and be surprised it's real. 20 miles southwest of downtown Los Angeles, the city runs out of flat ground and drops into the sea. The Palos Verdes Peninsula rises sharply from the Pacific, its cliffs cut from marine sediment that tectonic pressure pushed above the waterline millions of years ago. The ocean floor lifted into a headland. The rock is orange and unstable, prone to landslides that have been reshaping this coastline for as long as anyone has been watching. Point Vicente Lighthouse has stood at the edge since 1926, 67 feet tall on a cliff that keeps moving beneath it. From above, the coves are a different color than the open water, turquoise where kelp beds catch the light, deep blue further out. Wild brush grows right to the cliff edge, and below it the shore is all boulders and broken rock, no beach to speak of. The coastal road follows the curve of the peninsula with nothing between it and the drop. Marine fog comes in without warning, and when it does, the lighthouse earns its keep. The Santa Monica Mountains don't stop at the coast. They run straight into the Pacific, and Malibu exists in the narrow margin where that collision happens. "21 miles of it, strung along a single highway with the ocean on one side and the mountain on the other. In places, the road is carved directly into the cliff face, nothing between the asphalt and the water below. The beach colony started filling in during the 1920s, houses built so close to the surf that waves reach their foundations at high tide. one of the most exposed addresses in California, and one of the most sought after. Surfrider Beach, just east of the pier, became the first surf spot in the country, designated a World Surfing Reserve in 2010. On any given morning, dozens of surfers sit in the lineup waiting. From above, they look like punctuation marks scattered across a sentence the ocean keeps rewriting. Malibu Pier has been here since 1905, and the view from it hasn't changed in its essential structure: mountains, road, beach, water. The lagoon behind the pier is a protected estuary where the creek meets the sea, a quieter version of Malibu, overlooked by the people driving past on PCH. Brown pelicans work the coast in formation, riding the updraft off the cliffs. Paragliders launch from the same hills. At sunset, the mountains go dark fast, the light holding longest on the water. Malibu has a population of about 12,000, a small city that somehow contains one of the most filmed coastlines on Earth. The content of this video is compiled from various sources. Please leave a comment below if you find any inaccuracies. Badwater Basin sits 282 feet below sea level, the lowest point in North America, and the salt flat that covers it is what's left of a lake that dried up thousands of years ago. Standing on it, the ground looks like cracked white ceramic stretching to the base of the mountains, the polygons of salt pushed up at the edges by evaporation still happening in real time. From Dante's View, 5,476 feet above, the entire basin lays out below like a relief map: valley floor, salt flat, Panamint Range on the far side, all of it bone dry. Death Valley receives less than 2 inches of rain a year. The colors in the hills come from chemistry: iron oxides, manganese, chlorides, each mineral oxidizing to a different shade, which is why artists' palette looks painted rather than geological. Zabriskie Point is made of ancient lake sediment, compressed and then carved by the rare rains that do arrive, cutting the Badlands into the folded forms visible from every direction. On the racetrack playa, boulders move across the flat mud and leave long trails behind them. Researchers confirmed in 2014 that thin sheets of ice, pushed by wind, are what move them. The park covers 3.4 million acres, most of it roadless. In summer, the valley floor can exceed 130 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough that the air itself feels like a physical presence. The roads through the canyons are empty for most of the day. What noise exists here is wind and the occasional crack of rock expanding in the heat. Death Valley doesn't ask you to admire it. It simply continues. Carmel-by-the-Sea has about 3,200 residents and no street addresses. Mail goes to the post office, and locals collect it themselves. The town decided a long time ago what it wanted to be, and it's been enforcing that decision ever since. No chain stores, no neon signs, strict limits on building height, and a protected canopy of Monterey cypress and pine that swallows the rooftops from above. From the air, the village almost disappears into the trees. The beach at the foot of Ocean Avenue is white sand ground from decomposed granite, and it runs in a clean arc below the headland toward Point Lobos. On overcast mornings, the water turns the color of sea glass. Surfers work the break, while the fog sits at the tree line, undecided. The Carmel River meets the ocean just south of town at a lagoon that shifts shape with the seasons, sandbar building and dissolving with each winter. Monterey cypress grow along the cliffs above the rocky shoreline, gnarled by wind into shapes that look designed rather than grown. Dogs are allowed off-leash on Carmel Beach, which may be the most honest statement the city makes about its priorities. Clint Eastwood served as mayor here from 1986 to 1988, which tells you something about the scale. The granite outcrops at the south end of the beach are sharp and dark, with surge channels that fill and empty with each wave. Point Lobos begins where the town ends, one of the most intact marine reserves on the California coast, directly adjacent. From the air, the scale of it takes a moment to register. The Port of Long Beach, together with the Port of Los Angeles, forms the busiest port complex in the Western Hemisphere, and the container cranes that line its terminals are tall enough to clear the largest ships afloat. tens of millions of containers move through here every year, stacked and sorted on a waterfront that runs for miles. Then the harbor turns a corner and the city begins. Marinas packed with sailboats, a palm-lined promenade, a downtown skyline reflected in the inner harbor at sunset. The RMS Queen Mary has been docked at the south end of the harbor since 1967, retired from 30 years of North Atlantic crossings. During World War II, she carried up to 16,000 troops per voyage, sailing fast enough that submarines couldn't track her. Now she sits still. Long Beach itself has nearly 500,000 residents and several miles of beach running west from downtown, wide and flat and busy on summer weekends. The lighthouse at the entrance to Rainbow Harbor marks the boundary between the working port and the recreational one, two versions of the same waterfront, operating simultaneously. At dusk, the container cranes go dark and the marina lights come on, and for a moment, the transition between the two feels almost deliberate. From above, Los Angeles is harder to read than most cities. No obvious center, no single skyline, just a grid of low buildings that runs from the mountains to the ocean and keeps going. The metro area covers nearly 4,850 square miles, and the freeway system that holds it together stretches over 500 miles of lanes, most of them visible from any flight in or out. The downtown towers are real, but they're not the whole story. LA is mostly horizontal, mostly palms and rooftops and streets named after saints. Griffith Observatory has watched over the city from its hillside since 1935, and on clear days the view from there confirms what the aerial view suggests. This place is enormous and still spreading. The Hollywood sign went up in 1923 as a real estate advertisement for a development called Hollywoodland. The last four letters were removed in 1949, and what remained became something else entirely. Walt Disney Concert Hall opened in 2003. Frank Gehry's stainless steel curves landing on Grand Avenue like an object from a different century than everything around it. Hollywood Boulevard still draws crowds to the sidewalk stars and the forecourt of the Chinese Theater. The Santa Monica Mountains cut directly through the urban fabric, one of the only mountain ranges in the world that bisects a major city, with hiking trails 20 minutes from downtown. To the west, the city runs out at the beach, Santa Monica, Venice, Pacific Palisades, all stacked along a coast that the rest of the city orients itself toward. At sunset, the haze turns the whole basin amber, the towers going gold before the grid below them. Lassen Peak is the largest plug dome volcano on Earth, and it last erupted in 1917. Recent enough, by geological measure, that the park around it is still classified as an active volcanic system. The summit sits at 10,457 feet. Buried under snow for most of the year, the mountain's cone shape unmistakable from any direction. Below the snow line, the ground tells a different story. At Bum Pass Hell, the largest hydrothermal area in the park, mud pots boil at the surface, and fumaroles vent sulfurous steam through vents that have no plans to stop. Lassen Volcanic National Park contains all 4 types of volcanoes found on Earth: plug dome, shield, cinder cone, and composite, the only place in the world where that's true. From the air, the scale of the snowfields, and the silence of the summit make it easy to mistake this for just another mountain. Lake Tahoe sits at 6,225 feet on the California-Nevada border, and the first thing anyone notices is the color: turquoise over the granite shallows, shifting to deep cobalt where the bottom drops away, eventually reaching 1,645 feet at its deepest point. That's deep enough to submerge a 160-story building, and on still days you can see the boulders clearly through 60 feet of water. The lake formed in a graben, a valley dropped between fault lines rather than carved by glaciers, which is why the basin holds its shape and its water so completely. It is the largest alpine lake in North America, 22 miles long, 12 miles wide, containing enough water to cover the entire state of California 14 inches deep. Because of its sheer volume, the lake almost never freezes. The thermal mass is too great for winter to overcome it entirely. Snow covers the Sierra Nevada peaks surrounding it for most of the year, the white ridgelines doubling in the surface on calm mornings. Emerald Bay cuts into the southwest shore, its water shifting green where the depth changes, with Vinette Island sitting at its center, the only island in the lake. The East Shore Road runs along granite cliffs above the waterline, pine forest on one side, open water on the other, the mountains of the Carson Range visible across the lake on clear days. At the south end, casino hotels rise above the tree line at State Line, Nevada, an abrupt reminder that the state line runs straight through the basin. Boats anchor in the coves through summer, their hulls suspended over visible rock. At higher elevations, the surrounding terrain is pure Sierra granite, pale, lichen-covered, the same stone that forms the lake's floor. 22 miles off the coast of Los Angeles, Catalina sits in the Pacific like a secret the city forgot to mention. From above, Avalon's harbor opens in a crescent of turquoise, hundreds of sailboats at anchor, the hills stacked with white houses all the way to the ridgeline. The water here isn't the gray-green of the mainland coast. It's a different color entirely. The Catalina Island Conservancy protects nearly 88% of the island. No highways, no sprawl, just ridgelines that roll into the sea. That white building with the red dome along the waterfront is the casino, built in 1929 as a ballroom and theater. It has never hosted a single hand of cards. In 1924, a film crew brought 14 American bison to the island for a western. They never left, and their descendants still roam the interior hills today. On clear days, divers beneath Avalon's harbor can see up to 100 feet down through the kelp. The island fox, found nowhere else on Earth, pulled back from the edge of extinction here in the early 2000s, one of the fastest recoveries ever recorded for an endangered species. At the island's highest point, Mount Orizaba rises 2,097 feet above the water. From up there, on a clear afternoon, you can see both the open Pacific and the distant outline of the city that most visitors were escaping when they boarded the ferry. The name comes from Spanish, laguna, meaning lagoon, and standing above the coastline, you understand why. Laguna Beach is built on cliffs. Houses stack up the hillsides in every direction, and below them, more than 30 distinct beaches and coves are cut into the rock. This isn't one long stretch of sand. It's a coastline that keeps changing. Open beach, then a rocky headland, then a sheltered cove with water so still it reflects the sky. Artists discovered this light in the early 1900s and never left. By the 1920s, Laguna had become one of California's first dedicated arts colonies, drawn here by the same thing everyone else comes for. The cliffs drop straight into the Pacific, and where they meet the water, tide pools collect in the rock. Sea urchins, anemones, small fish in water barely an inch deep. On summer weekends, the main beach fills completely, umbrellas wedged against the surf, the hills rising green and dense behind them. In the early mornings, when the fog sits low and the water goes flat gray, it looks like a different place entirely. The city was incorporated in 1927 with a population of roughly 22,000 people, small enough that residents still know when the crowds have left. Sacramento doesn't announce itself the way coastal California does. It earns attention slowly from above. The city sits in the floor of the Central Valley, where the Sacramento and American rivers meet, surrounded by one of the densest urban tree canopies in the United States. From the air, it looks more like a forest with a city inside it than a capital built on open land. That gold drawbridge spanning the Sacramento River is the Tower Bridge, completed in 1935, painted the same color as the gold that built this city. In January 1848, gold was discovered about 50 miles east of here at Sutter's Mill, and Sacramento became the place every prospector passed through on the way to the Sierra Nevada. The state capitol dome, white against the tree line, has been anchoring this skyline since 1874. Sacramento served as the western terminus of the first transcontinental railroad, the point where the continent's two ends finally connected in 1869. What's striking from above is how flat everything is. The Central Valley stretches in every direction without interruption, the city sitting at barely 30 feet above sea level, the Sierra Nevada a clear line on the eastern horizon on days when the haze lifts. The river has shaped this city from the beginning. Floods, trade, the ferry crossings that came before the bridges. In autumn, the tree canopy turns and the whole city goes gold again, the same color it's always been chasing. California feels like a collection of many worlds woven into a single journey, each with its own character and rhythm. One day may be spent beneath towering redwoods, while the next unfolds along sunlit coastlines or in the heart of a bustling city. Its appeal lies not only in famous landmarks, but in the endless variety of experiences waiting beyond them. There is a spirit of creativity and possibility here that seems to shape both the landscapes and the people who call it home. Rather than offering a single unforgettable moment, California leaves you with countless ones, each telling a different part of its story.